got your back. He's got your front. He's got your side. He's got his angels on assignment. He said that they would have to answer to him for us. He is for us. He's your beckative. He walks through the door before you. He is for you. He is for me. He is for all of us who acknowledge that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. I always say, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like, I still believe in God the Father, Jesus Christ his Son, and the Holy Spirit. No matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like, no matter what it even sounds like, trust me, he is for you. Thank you, praise team. Thank you, minstrels. You may be seated. You know, I've heard that song many times because that's what people like us do. We search and we listen. But I could tell you something. It never ministered to me when I saw it, where I saw it, like it ministered to me this morning. So don't let anybody fool you, praise team. It is about the vessel. Good morning. Good morning, Tabernacle of Praise. I'm going to get myself situated here because it's been a long time. And the last time I was here, we were not on social media. I got a call from Pastor De Silva. I was getting over what they said was pneumonia. This is just an aside. It was March 14th, 2020. I was sick in my body. I had been sick in my body for a month. Born in Ottawa, Canada, raised in Springfield, Massachusetts, and I never had pneumonia till March 20. No, it was February. No matter what I did, I just, I would do my teaching thing, and I had to say to myself when I got back to it, you're going to sit down and do this today. Because teaching requires a lot of energy. And looking back now, I said to myself, when I finally did go to the doctor, because I was in the process of moving, and I was packing, and I remember there was a time when I sat up in the bed, and I was in my birthday. I'm not sorry to be graphic. Sorry to be graphic, but don't let your mind go there. But I was sitting on a stool in my room, and sweat was just running off me. I wasn't doing nothing. And God said to me, put yourself in the shower like you would put a baby in the shower. And I got out the shower. He said, get back in the shower. Like, that's what you do to break a baby's fever. And I remember saying, God, if you're going to take me, just let me do this. Well, 4 years later, I don't care what they say. I know they did not have the test at the time. So the most the urgent care doctor could say to me is, why is half of your left lung collapsed? Because I didn't get there till like 8 days later. He says, you got pneumonia. I said, I got pneumonia. Okay. So as I said, the assignment came 3/14/20. You know what I had. And I'm glad to be with you here on February 11th, 2024. I'm going to try to work this technology. I just want to give greetings to my bishop, Bishop Eric Garnes, in his absence. To the wonderful leader that he is, hoping he's enjoying the sunshine wherever he is. And just that I will be scheduling an appointment to meet with you when you're back in the United States. I want to give a shout out to Lady Garnes, my favorite lady in red. When she got the news, she said, oh, you preaching or you bringing Black History Month in? So I hope that the month is short, but I hope that I could be back just to pay honor to the ancestors. I want to greet the clerics of the house. I'm missing some in sight, but I know they're here in heart. the clerics and their faithfulness to stay the course. And of course, to the blood wash, the saints of God. Quick shout out this morning, I have to say it because I know my bishop would do it, to Mother Duhaney over there. It was such a privilege to see you in her calm, sweet way as always. And to my niece Monet and my niece via friendship, Keisha Newenkirk, who allowed me to get a hard copy last night because I didn't catch Staples. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for another day of life, for your love, your care, and your protection. Thank you, God, for keeping us and for sustaining us and being with us. I pray, Lord, that you would speak through me these lips of clay, the words that I ought to say, to share your goodness and let your people know that you are with them in every way. I thank you in Jesus' name. So if I would title this anything, I would say, do you hear what I hear? I believe I sang that in the Christmas season, right? I see Jason's over here singing it. Don't get me going. It is one of my favorite Christmas songs. Since you need to know, my second favorite is The Little Drummer Boy. Out of all the songs, and I know a lot of them, those two are my favorite. And it's funny that they are because they're very basic and simple songs. But I love the message. So let's go to the scripture. John, chapter 10. Do you hear what I hear? John chapter 10, Jesus is speaking to people who are not believing him. New King James Version, but I will go ahead. You may stand for the reading of the word if your heart says so. Most assuredly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him, the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them. Sounds like the song, right? And the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Yet they will by no means follow a stranger, but will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. Verse 27 says, my sheep hear my voice. You can say it. And I know them, and they follow me. Sheep, you may be seated. May God add a blessing to the reading of his word. I'm sure I did something out of order because it just wouldn't be if I didn't. That's just the quirkiness. I have a pet peeve. I really do. And I have a pet peeve about technology. Maybe, Lady Garnes, don't be offended because I'm really like 92% strong right now. Maybe it is because I'm an audio kind of person. And when you're audio, you take things in through your ability to hear. So it's very developed. But then maybe some of you might agree with me. It seems to me that for all the technological advancements, and I can attest that much of it is really, really just out of this world. It is helpful to us, especially in our humanity. And if I, Kerri Little, take into account modern medical technology, you would say I am a walking wonder because I can walk 4 miles a day now. And I know that I'm half the bionic woman, but it's working for me. I'm a walking witness, and so are you. But it just seems, maybe you think I'm wrong, that they are not really able, the smart people that create technology, those college kids, those geeks. It seems to me, no matter how smart they come together and put their smarts, that they are not really able to harness sound. Maybe it's just me. But when I think of it, I say, okay, look at a refrigerator. It's plugged in, it's working. It's not the ice box of yesteryear, but it still makes 2 to 3 decibels of sound, different sounds. You hear it when it's groaning. You hear the fridge when it's moaning. You know when the fridge is making ice. Okay? Okay, you don't believe me? Just turn on a vacuum. Watch the dog, the cat, or a baby go running, because vacuums are loud in our hearing. How many agree with me with that? I don't know if you have a quiet vacuum. I don't. I got a Roomba, and it still makes a lot of noise. The same thing with a blow dryer. I don't care what they do, the blow dryer makes a lot of noise. And not to mention the leaf blower, okay? I got one next door that wakes me up every morning at 7 a.m. Boo! Ooh, I don't care. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, he's blowing the leaf blower. I don't care if I had Anderson windows, I would still hear that leaf blower. You got a neighbor like I know you do in Connecticut. All good. They're all good. They're all sleek with technology. But everything makes a sound. And most of it, we just have to live with. If you agree with me, raise your hand. So in my surmising, I'm saying, what's the matter? They can't harness sound waves? You know, is it just LG or is it just Bose? But maybe they should be making the appliances that we need. I often wonder, is sound going to be the last frontier? Forget outer space. We ain't even covered sound yet. Sound is very important. And within the spectrum of sound, there are instruments. You see me checking my watch, so you know where I got that from, right? Okay, stay under long enough, you'll catch it. All right, I'm giving myself 25. Sound is very important, and I said within the spectrum of sound, there are instruments used for music, like the saxophone, the piano. Give me something there. Anything. Just be you. That's their head and the organ. And of course, my favorite, the voice. I like the voice. I like the voice because I realize that it is the only instrument, not putting anybody down or what they do with their instruments, but the voice is the only musical instrument made by the hand of God. He sewed it into flesh. All the other instruments, the gifting is there in the flesh, but in order to create the musical sound, it must be molded or processed or made through human hands. And then given to a minstrel like Jason or Brother Marco so that they could pour their gift through. But the voice, God said, I will make it myself. I've studied the voice. Yes, I did. From the age of 13. And before that, I was just singing in the house to Shaka Khan and Minnie Riperton and a whole bunch of other people till my mother said, oh, no, this kid needs to go get voice lessons. And my sister would play, and I would stand there and sing all the hits of that decade. I'm not telling you what decade. But I kept her on beat because she was reading, but I kept the melody going because we knew the songs, right? We didn't have a million channels. We just had a radio station, maybe 3 if you're good. I know as a music educator that if God didn't put it there, neither can I. And I've had those students show up. I can recall watching the processional of Queen Elizabeth's funeral. Did anybody watch that? Was that 2022, right? You know, she reigned a long time. Was it 70 years? Right? I remember watching it. I set my alarm so I could get up at that hour of the morning because, you know, they're ahead of us like 5 hours. And I remember seeing that the band went before the soldiers. And the band went before the family. And they walked. And the band was playing, especially the brass section, the trumpets, the trombones, and the French horns. They were playing some loud, somber music. Blah, 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 Bon, 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 bon. And they would walk to that beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it was so profound to me. It was in itself a statement. Did anybody watch it, or it's just me? Can you raise your hand if you watched it? I'm trying to, make a connection. Okay, all right. The processional was about as lengthy as her life. It was long, and I was like, boy, they're going to have blisters on their feet. This is why you must always have a good pair of shoes, right? My real ones are in the back there. But the processional was long, but you knew. Not only England, but all of the world knew she died. However, I noted one thing. The band played from wherever they took her body, and they marched all the way to Westminster Abbey. But when they got to Westminster Abbey, the church, only the voices were allowed to make music or sound in the temple. If you don't believe me, pull it up and fast forward and rewind. I watched that. The band was loud in the streets, bah, 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 but when they hit the temple, it was voice and voice alone. It was profound to me. I said, well, there go the band teacher. She gone. Now it's your turn. When the boys' choir sang, and they're the best in the world, and they want those boys just before puberty, because their voice, you can't tell their gender. Their voices can hit high. They're pure. When the boys' choir sang, and the sound hit the walls of that ancient building, I felt God. I felt the presence of God. And at the very least, I saw the reverence for God. Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they will follow me. The songwriter said, do you hear what I hear? A song, high above the tree, with a voice as big as the sea, with a voice as big as the sea. That's a crazy analogy, as the sea is huge. To me, that's the most poignant, meaningful lyric of that song. Because in this verse, and there are 4, the little lamb said, the little lamb to the shepherd boy. Do you hear that? That's what the little lamb saying, do you hear that? I believe the songwriter captured the joy of a lamb, a baby sheep responding to its shepherd's voice. Our Lord goes on to say that these people that he was speaking to in John, that they did not understand what he was saying. And I get it, because he spoke in parables. They probably said, we always got to figure this dude out. Talk straight. But I get it, because we don't always catch it the first time. Thank you for putting it back up. We don't always catch it the 40th time. That's why the game is called life. Some of us, we got to do it again and again and again. They say that rote teaching is not the way. That's from yesteryear. But there's some things you got to teach by rote. You want to spell the word bad, B-E-A-D. No, I'm like B-A-D. B-A-D. Sometimes you got to meet it out like that so they'll get it. Think about your own curves of learning. I get it that we don't always catch it the 40th time, because we're human. And we all need an IEP. I'm glad some of you laughed, because in education, we know that an IEP is called an individualized educational plan, because we're all special. And IEPs came down the chute in the 1970s when the federal government passed an act called the IDEA Act, which allowed for students with disabilities to be able to attend public school and not be in the institution anymore. And although I believe that it's 40-something years later, that aspects of it do need to be revisited. But I do believe that we all, and especially when I was on the teaching front, I said, no, they all need an IEP. They all need an IEP. I don't care if you want to call it HDD or CCC or baby. They all have issues, and so do their educators. We all need an individualized educational plan. You know why? Because we're all special. The same class that you learn about the children with disability is the same class that you learn about the gifted and talented. It's one class, but we only pay attention to the dissers. In my studies this week, I came across an article from Utah Valley Church. The writer shared that while his mother had to take supplemental educational credits to maintain her certification, this is very familiar territory, one summer he and his sister got jobs on a farm. His job was to gather the sheep after they ate. He goes on to explain that what he thought would be a simple job became a hard task. He explained that in shepherding in Jesus' days, I guess we would call that ancient times, shepherds would put their sheep out to pasture, or they would put them in a corral, I guess it's a large gathering place, after they ate. And there would be a gatekeeper who would let the shepherds come in to gather them when the shepherd was ready. But you can't get into the corral unless you are a shepherd / owner of the sheep that are in there. So this is why Jesus said, if you come another way, you are a robber and a thief. And now it makes much more sense to me. Many sheep would be mixed up together in the corral. You might have Farmer Joe's sheep, Farmer Brown's sheep, Cousin JoJo's sheep, and the whole countryside, their sheep might be there because they needed to be watched. The thing is, though, that each shepherd, this really blew my mind, how he taught it. Each shepherd had to call their sheep, and each shepherd had their own unique sound. A unique sound, and it said mechanism. So when it says mechanism, I'm thinking that maybe they made a little instrument, something that they trained their sheep to recognize. They had to use their voice to call their sheep. And when the shepherd called them, they would come out of the corral and follow their shepherd out. By a voice call. Can you imagine that? How many times you got to be calling your kids? I said, come on! I used to say, Ariel, let's go! That was my favorite line. I saw teachers do this for years. They're out at lunchtime. They're all over the place. And the aides, sometimes they wouldn't listen to the aides who were at lunch with them. But you let the teacher show up and gave them a face like this. It all stopped. All the hitting stopped. All the kicking stopped. It stopped. And when I gave them that face, I said, don't you even talk till we get upstairs. Sometimes we had to rule like that. I came from the day where you didn't walk straight. We practiced up and down the stairs. We practiced up and down the stairs. Today they tell you it's child abuse. Well, it worked for me. Woo. But they would use their voice to call the sheep. Woo! I'm wondering what kind of sounds they use. Those are the music sheep, right? But their sound, the sheep knew. And you couldn't get in unless you made that sound. They were used to the voice that their shepherd used to call them, to come to him. The sheep knew the call. The sheep knew the sound of their shepherd's voice, and they were drawn to it. That's basic shepherding 101. I don't want to take the A class. That's enough for me. So this young shepherd boy, the writer of the article, had a hard time gathering the sheep because they weren't paying him any attention, because he did not make the right sound for them to follow. Sheep are dumb. That's what I've heard them say. But I don't think sheep are that dumb, because sheep will give the person that's not their shepherd a hard time. I ain't listening to you. Who are you? That's what they do to substitute teachers. Wow. You know? And if you're starting out in teaching, you're going to get a job as a sub. You got to break them. I was good with the dirty look because I was only 5 foot tall. So they would respect people taller than me. And then I was much younger. I had to give them a dirty look. You had to. I got that one from my mom. Some of the moms are in this room. You know, when parents parented by the dirty look, they didn't have to show out in public. I always had a deal. You show out in public, I show out in public. But you now there's surveillance cameras everywhere. And if you were light enough, you didn't go to school the next day. Let me get back to the word. Sheep are dumb, they say, but they knew that this boy was not their shepherd. He did not have the shepherd's voice, the sound that they knew, recognized, and trusted. Voice, voice, voice cannot be duplicated on the face of the earth. Voice cannot be duplicated. It is unique to every individual. Not even twins have the same sound. So I don't care who tries to sing, oh, say, can you? Like the goat, it ain't gonna happen for them, because only she had that voice. You know what I'm talking about. Sister Donna, then Norris, and don't worry, I asked her permission. She used to say to me and my sister, who's Elder Grant, that she could never tell the difference between our voices. And back in those days, we would get a call with an assignment, not a text message from the other side of the world at 5:30 in the morning. Technology. We would just get a phone call. But Sister Donna, in her tenure here, she said it one day. And we laughed, and I think my sister said to her, well, the only person who really can, and if you've ever spoken to us on the phone, it is really true, is my mom, Lynette Little. My mom always knew the difference between me and E.G. Why? Because she raised us, right? I'm sure mothers in here and fathers can tell the difference of their children, how they even enter the home, right? But we were her girls, and she knew us individually, and she knew us collectively. And she would call. We were 3 Ks, Karen, Kareen, and Kerri. And I didn't clear this one, but I'm going to say it. Karen and Kareen would pretend they didn't hear her calling. There's only a 1-letter difference. Ka, ka. They would pretend, no matter where we were, and we lived in a big house, she would call, Karen, Karen, and they would pretend. I call them the big fakers. They faked it, Brother Marco. They faked it because they knew she was going to go to number 3. Kerri! And my name was distinct, had a different diphthong or sound in the beginning. So there was no mistaking it. And those big fakers did that to me all the time. But I was trained by it, Lady Guards, because I was the child that she could count on to get up at 4:30 in the morning and fix her tea because she knew that I was a light sleeper. So even in the summer, when you're a kid, all you want to do is sleep. I would get up and make her tea because she had to travel like 30 minutes to her job up in the country. She worked at a mental institution, and she would leave early to be there for 6 a.m. And I learned to make her breakfast and sometimes write her cute little notes asking her for money for the bake sale. And I'm still not a heavy sleeper till today. I'm like my first lady. Sleep is something we'll do in heaven. But it speaks to hearing that voice and being trained by it. Shepherds spent time with the sheep. I'm going to close soon. They even slept with the sheep, I hear. And they smelled like sheep. Can you imagine? Why else you think when they came to announce Jesus' birth, they were out in the field? They weren't in the bed with their boo. They were out on the field with their sheep. They smelled like sheep. The shepherds took care of the sheep. Jesus said, I lay down my life for the sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and another they will not follow. Back on the farm, when the shepherds came to collect their sheep, they called them by their voice, and the sheep followed their shepherd out of the corral to wherever the shepherd led them. I ask you today, are you hearing the voice of your shepherd? I ask us today, are we hearing the voice of our shepherd? Do you hear what I hear? Do you hear what I hear? There's things that we should all hear because we're here at 1274 Utica that we have in common. One mission, one vision. Look with me at 1 Samuel chapter 3. I'm almost done. I only have half a page. 1 Samuel, it says Samuel's first prophecy. Now the boy Samuel ministered to the Lord before Eli. He was his high priest. And the word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no widespread revelation. I'm going to go ahead for you. And it came to pass at that time, while Eli was lying down in his place, and when his eyes had begun to grow so dim that he could not see, so he was, had the cataracts going on. They didn't have the surgery of today available. He had to just deal with it. He had to go blind, right? And before the lamp of God went out in the tabernacle of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and while Samuel was lying down, that the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, "Here I am." So he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." And he said, "I did not call. Lie down again." And he went and lay down. Then the Lord called yet again, "Samuel." So Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." He answered, remember, he's a boy. Did I miss the joke? Okay. "I did not call my son. I did not call my son." He said, "Lie down again." This sleep must have been sweet for Eli. Now Samuel did not yet, pay attention to verse 7, know the Lord, nor was the word of the Lord yet revealed to him. And the Lord called Samuel again the third time. So he arose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you did call me." Then, it says, Eli perceived that the Lord had called the boy. Therefore, Eli said to Samuel, "Go lie down, and it shall be, if he calls you, that you must say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant hears." So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel answered, "Speak, for your servant hears." Verse 11, I'm done after this. Then the Lord said to Samuel, "Behold, I will do something in Israel, at which both ears of everyone who hears, will tingle." God will speak to a boy or a girl. He's looking to speak to the ones he knows are listening. Samuel was in training for the priesthood from a boy. We know the backstory. His mother Hannah couldn't have children and begged God for Samuel. She gave him up to the priesthood as a baby. But the word tells us that the word of the Lord was rare in those days. It wasn't on blah, blah, and so, and the blank, blank network. No, it wasn't on your phone or on YouTube or on Facebook. The Bible says the word was rare in those days. And in 7, it says that Samuel did not yet know the Lord. He did not know God's voice yet. He did not know God's voice yet. Nor was the word of the Lord yet revealed to him. Okay, get rid of the old English. God had not revealed the word yet to Samuel. Here he is, imagine, daily serving in the temple, doing whatever Eli says. Bring me the cloth, bring me the linen, bring me the shewbread. Trying to stay alive that you didn't get knocked out or vaporized, right? But he was, because that's what would have gone down in that temple, right? Daily he's serving. Daily, he's following his mentor, mimicking his movements, and just serving Eli, being a help to Eli. He was in training, but he didn't know God. He was doing the things of the church, the temple, but he did not know God. He didn't have any revelation of the word. Sounds a lot like us, right? We could be in church 30 years. Let's talk for real now. And still need to walk that walk to the altar and say, "I surrender all." We can have all the formalities. For the Bible says having a form of godliness, but denying the power. I don't want that to be me. We got to really get honest with ourselves. I don't care who see me walk to the altar. I don't really care. They see me, they say, "Oh, I thought she was." You know what? I'm going to make sure I get it right. Because when he comes, I want to be out of here. I ain't trying to be in the remnant to go through the rapture. He was in training and he did not know God. The Bible says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh." Samuel did not know the Word. We can miss this thing. We can miss this thing. He can come and say, "I don't know you." That's what the Word says. Or he can come and say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." I don't want him saying to me, "I never knew you." Because then I'll say to myself, "Well, why did I give him so much in life for? What did I walk away from? You think this is easy? He messed up my whole week. The whole week. I'm in a big old house by myself and ain't nobody to talk to. I didn't even babysit the alley this week. Only Deaconess Dorette saved me Friday to go downtown to the Board of Ed and tell me, "Control yourself." Control yourself, Little. He messed up. You think it's easy? No, it's not. We'll talk to God later. But we could miss this thing. I hate when I miss God. Have any of you ever missed him? He did something in your life you were asking him to do, and it went right by, and you, oh, man, I should have listened. Okay, maybe some of you holy rollers didn't. I'm not a holy roller anymore. I just tell people I'm holy. Because I know I miss God sometimes. And if we're not careful, we can miss this thing. He told us to watch for when he's coming. We must study to show ourselves approved unto God. Workmen and women that are able to rightly divide the word of truth. Because there's people out there who are not rightly dividing it. And they're leading people astray. Saying and doing things that Jesus never said to do. We can miss this thing if we're not careful. So Samuel went to Eli 3 times, and by the 3rd time, Eli recognized it was God. Samuel went to the one who was his mentor. He had to weigh what he heard against the one who he knew did know God's voice. So the scripture says he told him to lie back down, and if he does speak to you this time, say, "Speak, Lord." Samuel needed instruction to know how to respond to the voice that called him. My mom used to say, "Oh, no, no, hear me," in her Jamaican accent. "Oh, no, no, hear me. Me I talk, but oh, no, no, hear me." What was she saying? You ain't really hearing what I'm saying. You can have a conversation with somebody and you say something, they say something. You say, especially those of you who are tied together in marriage, and you're fighting and you're arguing and one ups the other and one or anybody. But unless you get quiet and say in your mind, I'm going to really listen to what this person is saying, you're just playing tit for tat. I was a straight A student. You know, one of those smart ones I talked about. And I missed the first 3 weeks of school in 9th grade. So I transitioned from Catholic school into public school. That was hard enough, but I wasn't there because we had chicken pox. So by the time I get there, the algebra teacher was 3 weeks in. So was the typing teacher. Asked me how I type. Never could get a job for 75 words a minute. Not me. But I remember this Mr. Stevens was a teacher. They had said he was a college professor, and he would write on the board real fast. And I was like, I'm swimming. I got 6 A's and a D. And my mother took the report card and threw it away. Thank God that we've changed. Because a parent of today would say, the kid doesn't have the problem. There's a problem in the instruction. How can you get 6 A's and a D? Thank God we've progressed that way. But saying this, I heard in my head, Kerri, just listen and you will learn. I heard that inside of me. And from then I began to tune in to learning through listening. I didn't really understand that God was telling me, this is the gift I put in you. You're going to need it for more than just singing. Samuel needed that instruction. Job 33:14, can you pull it up? Says, for God may speak in one way. I wanted the KJV. Thank you. For God may speak in one way or in another, yet man does not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night. When did I say? Dream or vision of the night. When deep sleep falls upon men. Get up when you hear him call you. While they slumber on their beds, then he opens the ears of men. Look when he spoke to Samuel as he was transitioning into sleep. Then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction. He's speaking to us about our agenda in order to turn man from his deed. Every great show I planned, and I mastered planning shows with these kids. Every great show I planned at 2:30 in the morning. Because I worked all day, nothing would come out of me, and God would wake me up, and my hand would start writing. I would see things that he would tell me to do on stage with the kids. Job 33:14 says, "For God speaketh, yea, twice, and yet man perceives it not." Eli had to get woken up 3 times before he caught it. Special. Human. Look, saints, I'm on my last page. There are many voices that we hear. Some are loud, some are small, some are energizing, some are just downright annoying. Alexa, get out my conversation, Alexa. She's so nosy. She's so noisy. And then some of you put a British accent on Alexa or whatever. You know, when they could get the Jamaican accent on that thing, then I'll know. They're going to do right. Jason said they're going to do it. But in music, we use the word timbre or timbre to describe a voice's texture, like raspy or light, or you might say their voice is smooth. We also use the word dynamics to describe degrees of loud or soft. I saw the praise team and I heard them do an excellent example of the use of dynamics in the song they sang before the offering. So piano doesn't just mean piano, because music writing was really developed in the country of Italy. So piano means soft, and mezzo means medium, and forte means loud. Then you have mezzo piano or pianissimo, which means very, very soft. Hey, do you hear what I hear? Do you hear what I hear? Are you listening? Are you listening so much that even in your sleep, God can wake you up? Even if no one else hears it, God woke you up to tell you. Noah heard God tell him to build a boat. Build a boat, Noah. It's going to rain. Build a boat, Noah. It's going to rain. And no one else got the message. No one else on the face of the earth got that message. But he obeyed and he prepared for something that had never happened in the earth. Samuel, he wakes him up, calls him Samuel. Or maybe you're like Daniel. Daniel in chapter 10 said, I, Daniel alone. I, Daniel alone. Where was Daniel? He says, standing on the banks, I think, of the Tigris River. Daniel was a statesman, so he was busy. He wasn't in his bedroom. He said, I, Daniel alone. And he was surrounded with people that worked for him. I, Daniel alone. I done told God, no, you ain't going to do a Daniel on me. Because I don't want no heart attack. Because Daniel said I was weak, and the man had to touch me. I don't need that kind of, no, Lord, I could speak to me straight from the word. I don't want no surprise in the house. I'm going to tell you straight. I already did heart surgery once. We ain't doing it again. I don't want to be scared. Even though others were with him, he alone saw the vision. Are you listening? Are you really listening for the shepherd's voice, for his call? We must examine ourselves. Sheep, do you hear what I hear? Here's a few suggestions and then I'm out. How do we know it's God? How do you know it's the Lord? That's the next thing we ask ourselves. How do I know it's really God? Well, there are ways to distinguish or discern his voice. And I do not have the book on all of those ways. But I just got a few suggestions for you this morning. I believe that the voice must have evidence of Christ. The word The word, the word, the word, the word. Your word is a light unto my feet. Or a lamp, right? And a light unto my pathway. It must have the word in it. Timing is critical. When did I hear it? Where was I when I heard what I thought I heard him say to me? What was I doing? For it's in that time of transition, in or out of sleep for many of us, when God will speak. Like Samuel. Or maybe for you it's going to be like Daniel, right in the smack dead middle of your day. But you know that it's God. You will know that it's God because it will be uncanny, unusual. For me, I measure it and I'll say, I would have never thought that. Have you ever said that to yourself? I would have never thought that. That's how I began to learn in my 20s the voice of God, because I knew that thought was not a Kerri Little thought. It could be uncanny, but it can also happen in the middle of doing practical things. For example, I'm just going to put this down here. There goes my bliss sticks. But this quilt right here is a gift to me from my girlfriend who works at Detroit's Children's Hospital. And if you look, see it? It's a music quilt. And they were giving things away, and she collected, they were giving things away in the hospital. And if you look, it's the hymns of Christmas. I'll leave it up here so you can look if you want. Don't try to take it, though. Don't try to take it. And she sent this to me like 2 years ago. She said, I don't know anyone who likes Christmas like you. So, we real big Christmas fans in my family. And I was the host for Christmas this year. It was a lot of work, can I tell you? OMG, and I didn't have no helpers. Virtuous like the woman in Proverbs 31, but I ain't got no servants yet. So I'm doing everything. I did the top, I did the floor, and then I'm down in the basement because my older niece said, Auntie, let us just use the basement as the gift exchange place. And if you know these people, they can exchange some gifts. So I didn't want it in the living room because it's like a takeover. All the nieces and the grands, it's suffocating. So I said, I'm going to turn over the basement, set it up so they could do their gift exchange. But I'm setting up with God in the house, and I'm alone, and I'm home a lot right now with God. And I didn't know where to put the quilt. Because last year I put it over the candy table, but this year I'm like, I don't need them people spilling juice and stuff on my quilt. So I'm like, God, and it was like the last thing I had to do. I was like, God, I had prayed, Lord, show me where to put this thing. But I had prayed it like 2 weeks before. And I'm down in the basement, and I'm walking, and Lady Garns just put it up. Thank you so much, Lady Garns and Marisa. I walked by the side of the stairs and then the little wall with the light, and I turned on the light, and God said, put it here. And I laughed. I laughed. It was like I was at a party. I was like, I said, you're so cute, God. I said, really? I said, well, if you can do that, can you do this for me before the end of today? Because I have these conversations with God. And he did it. He did what I asked him to do right after he did this for me. Because in doing this for me, it opened up my faith in a moment to ask him to do something extra. Something that I didn't need, but that I desired. And by 4 o'clock that afternoon, he did the thing that I asked him for. God could tell you where to put a quilt. He could tell you where to put your shoes. He could tell you not to line your eyebrows. He could tell you what color dye to put in your hair. God can do it. If it's God, the word will repeat. If it's God, my last thing, it will come back to you. Eli said, go back and lie down. And if he speaks to you again, 4 times, he called Samuel. If it's God, the word's going to come to you again and again. It's going to be like a clarion sound. You're going to be so sick of it. You're going to say, yes, Lord, I'm going to get this sermon together this week. Yes, Lord, because I didn't ask you to do this. You can test it with your spiritual tools like prayer, fasting, meditation, which we don't do enough of. In those times, we can ask the Lord questions that only He can answer. Sometimes you got to arrest yourself. Hold yourself back. Turn down your plate to hear from God, because life can be so demanding. And by the way, the fast ain't really over. The fast ain't really over, because He said when the bridegroom is away that we would fast for Him to return. So your 3 weeks ain't over. We're not off the hook. The prophet said some of you will still have to fast last Friday. It was just designed to draw us closer so that we could hear, what the shepherd has to say. You may also try it with a mentor or a friend or of sound counsel in the faith. Watch that. Ask God, who can I share this with, Lord? Be careful, because you can't tell it to everybody. When I got this assignment, I weighed it against my last conversation with the Lord the night before. I tell you, I'm in the house and I'm saying all kind of stuff to God because I'm a fresh kid. And I always, please don't strike me dead, but I'm going to say, I know what I said to Him the night before. So when I got a 5:30 a.m. text, first I pretended I didn't see it. I know He's going to clean my clock. But I'm like, no, because I got two phones. I got an iPhone and I got a Samsung, because I just got to be like that right now in history. So I put the prayer call on my iPhone, and I always pick up this because I'm with this most. And I said, no. I said, what? Like, I'm in the bed, lady. I'm like, no. I said, you didn't see that. I said, your finger hit something, and it was from yesteryear. And then after the prayer, I picked up the phone, Ginger. I'm like, and I'm looking at the name from halfway around the world. And then I said, oh my God. I didn't respond right away. I said, you gotta think about this. But I weighed it against what I said to God during the fasting, and some things I said to God the night before, because He's my company. He's keeping me from going crazy. He's my best friend. Do you hear what I hear? I'm done. Are we listening for the Master's voice? Do you want to be called like a young boy like Samuel, or a young man like Daniel? Will He sit with you like Job and say, state your case? Will He say, state your case, talk it out with me? You see, I want God to talk to me. I want Jesus to talk to me. I hear Him every time Bishop Garnes hits this pulpit. You want to know I'm still here? Because God is still using Him to speak into my life. I want Jesus to tell me where to go and where not to go. Turn your car to the left, because He knows at the right I'm going to kill myself. I want Jesus to say to me, this is a witty idea. I'm going to share it with you. Make this invention. The essential question, as the educators say, the real question, do you want to know what He is saying to you? Do you want to know what He's saying to you? Because He's talking to all of us all day long. And most of the time, we're not paying Him any attention. Think about it. You may stand. I'm done. Think about it. Do you really want to know what He's saying to you for your life?